Hey everybody, happy Friday. As usual, I'm adjusting my tripod. Maybe one of these days I'll do it before I start the video. Happy Friday. I'm not sure what's going on in your neck of the woods, but here in New York and Brooklyn, it is raining like crazy. You can see my jeans hanging on the clothes rack there. I was out earlier running errands, and it was pouring. I was soaked. Thank God for my waterproof boots and my raincoat, because otherwise I would have been soaked head to toe. But literally, I felt like I had tights on. Those jeans are tight to begin with, and then when they're soaking wet, they were like totally hugging my legs. It's crazy, and I had to go out today because the L train is not running all weekend because they're doing work on it, and so I'll be in Brooklyn with no train. I mean, I could go over and catch the M if I wanted to, but so I went and ran errands. Anyway, blah blah blah. That's not the point of this this video. Is not to tell you about my errands today. I wanted to talk about this idea of the void and sort of my perception of energy cycles, and share my experience with you of how energy tends to cycle in my life, because I think that this may help some of you and sort of illuminate kind of what's going on right now. Yesterday I posted on my Facebook and on my Instagram that meme, the visual wisdom that said "so fucking what." It was the bright yellow one. You can't miss it. If you go to my Facebook page, you'll see it. I think I actually pinned it as my post. And I was talking about having been energetically in the void this past week, and it's really, really interesting because this is a place I've been before, and it's a place that I recognize and I know how to navigate. But sorry, I was just, okay, never mind, I'm distracted. It's a place I know how to navigate, but for whatever reason, I didn't really realize this is where I was until a couple of days ago. And so I wanted to share this with you and sort of give you perhaps some insight, because I think that a lot of us are in this place right now. So the void, when I talk about the void, it's not like I'm being emo. I'm not trying to be dramatic and dark and gloomy about it. What I mean by the void is it is a place of stillness. It is a place of emptiness. It is a place of being called to empty ourselves out. It is a place of really being called to step into this level of mastery and this place of mastery as the observer of our experience. Like, yes, we're the creator of our experience, but oftentimes, and especially in moments like this, we are called to get really, really clear and deliberate with being the observer of our experience, because when we're in the void, we tend to be in a place where, from our human perspective, we're being called to let go of a lot of things, a lot of old stories, a lot of old beliefs, a lot of old attachments, a lot of old fears. And it's interesting, I talk about this a lot, especially in private sessions, about our attachments to fears and our attachments to pain and our attachments to patterns that perhaps are not the healthiest or the happiest or the most enjoyable. And people, I think oftentimes, especially in the beginning of a spiritual experience, we have a difficult time understanding, well, why would we ever make ourselves miserable? Or why would we, continue to do things that harm us or hurt us or hold us back or sabotage ourselves or whatever? And there's a million different reasons as to why, right? I mean, the script or the story will be different for everyone. But a lot of times what it boils down to is the mind doesn't, this is the truth. The mind does not exist without a story. When we are free from a story, when we are free from a judgment, when we are free from an attachment, when we are free from an expectation, all of which stem from a story, the mind doesn't really exist. The brain is still functioning, right? The computer, the processor is still running the systems and doing what the brain does. But the mind, in terms of the identity of who the mind tells us we are or thinks we are, who has been told that we are, the mind doesn't really exist without a story. And so the mind doesn't really care when it comes down to it, when push comes to shove. The mind doesn't care if the story is one where we are miserable. The mind doesn't care if it's the story of, you as an unlovable person, or you as a damaged person, or you as a sick person, or you as an angry person, or you as an afraid person, or me as, a frustrated person, or me as a scared person, or whatever it is. The mind doesn't care. All the mind cares about is that there is a story to run, and the best case scenario for the mind is that the story is predictable, familiar, and controllable. and knowable, that the outcome will be knowable, right? And that's why we see chronic patterns, showing up in our life and saying, why is it that every single guy I date is ... Why is it that every single job I get is ... Why is it that every single woman I meet is like this? It's because the mind has chosen a story, and we have chosen to let the mind run the story and sort of control our experience, because the story, again, it doesn't matter if the story is one where we're unhappy or miserable, broken, sad, afraid, or whatever, as long as the story is something the mind knows how to tell. So, when we are in the void, like we are right now, and I'm going to give you sort of a bigger picture of the cycles of energy as I see it. When we are in the void, as we are right now, we are called to be present and observe. We are called to be present and watch. Creating a void is terrifying for the mind, because a void is where there is no story. A void is where there's no attachment. A void is where there is no expectation. A void is just when you're present with whatever is, free from a story, free from an expectation, oftentimes free from forward motion, free from forward momentum. And it's very interesting to watch when we're in this place to see what the mind starts to try to fill it up with, right? Because we drop the story, we lose the old patterning, and we just exist in this moment. We observe ourselves, and it's always a very interesting time to watch what the mind tries to stick in there, because the mind hates a vacuum. The mind can't stand it if there's no story, because that is how the mind exists. So when we're in the void as we are right now, it is a contraction. And a contraction, energy is a cycle. It's an ebb and a flow. It's an in and an out. It's an inhale and an exhale. It's a death and a rebirth. And after every contraction is an expansion, and then a contraction, and then an expansion. It's the torus. If you're not familiar with the torus, look it up, Torus, and the toroidal field. It is a cycle that governs pretty much everything, especially biological systems. So the void is part of the co-creative process. The void is part of the energetic cycles where we begin to where we are co-creating with our non-physical helpers, our non-physical friends. So when we are in the void, it is usually precedes a big leap forward, another big forward momentum thing. So this is what happens. This is the way I see it, is that energy comes in the non-physical. It comes in as a wave. It comes in as an impulse, as an insight, as a download, as a frequency. It's a vibration that comes in, because everything's energy. And so the energy comes in a wave, and it comes in non-physical, so it's moving really quickly. And when it comes in, that propels us forward. It gives us new insights, new ideas, new momentum, inspiration, connections zapping all over the place, and we are propelled forward. And and when we're talking about the co-creative process, the sort of the download or the influx of energy, that is our non-physical selves, whether it's our higher self, our guides, our angels, our teachers, whatever you want to call it. That is the higher version of self. That is doing this, sort of leading us forward and calling us forward and guiding us forward with this information that comes in as an energetic download or an energetic wave. And it propels us to a new level of awareness, sort of shoots us out of the rocket. It gives us that high of like, oh my God, I get it, right? Insight, bing, bing, bing. And it's like, things are popping all over the place. And then we sort of arrive at this new place, and the energy starts to slow down. Because and this is how energy works, right? Everything is energy. It's all just a different level of vibration. And when we're looking at something that's physical, a dense object that has physicality, that we can touch it, taste it, smell it, feel it, that is when the energy has slowed way down. Because in order to give the appearance of a solid thing, then the energy has to be moving much more slowly. So as the energy comes in a wave and it starts to really slow down, it starts to enter physicality, it starts to become physical, it starts to gain density. This is usually when our bodies start to have a physical response and we start to integrate it. Jenny Schlitz, who if you're not familiar with her work, she does amazing work. And she channels a lot of ascended masters, and she posted an article the other day that was a really, really brilliant explanation of how do you know when your physical symptom is just like an energy upgrade, and how do you know when your physical symptom is like your body is purging something or clearing something. And the way that she described it is perfect. That when we're physical and we're having the aches and the pains or the ascension flu or the fever or the sleeplessness or the crazy naps or whatever it is that we're having, or food cravings, whatever it is, but we're still sort of feeling okay, like, you know, emotionally, we're still sort of like, yeah, I'm really tired and I'm super hungry and I'm kind of all over the place, but I'm good. That's usually new energy coming in. So that's usually the body just responding to this new influx of energy. And as it continues to slow down, as it continues to integrate into the physical body, that's when our higher self, our guides, our angels, our helpers, our non-physical friends, they say, okay, you got it. You're good, right? You're here. You're at your new level of awareness. You have all your energy stuff. We've given you our packet. And now we're going to hand the ball off to you. And that's when it starts to get really, really slow and starts to get really, really dense. And that's when it starts to come in and reshape our internal landscape. That's when the energy body starts to respond. That's when the cellular stuff starts to happen, the purge of cellular memory, the neural pathways being rewritten, the going in there and getting all the emotional muck out, all of those old thoughts, those old fears, those old patterns, those old beliefs start to come up because we're being squeezed. Because what has happened is in this big energy boost, we arrive at a new level of awareness. And we're like, okay, cool, I'm in this new reality, I'm on these new shores. And as we begin to anchor into it, and we begin to merge with it, in physical, mental, emotional, and energetic selves all start to come together and merge. That's when it becomes really clear what we can't take with us. That's when the void begins to happen. That's when we start to come into this emptying out phase, because it's almost like customs. Like, okay, what do you got to claim? I have 10 pounds of emotional baggage. I have 13 pounds of fear of, boundary issues. I have 12 pounds of anger issues, or, and I have I have a backpack full of trust issues, or whatever it is. And so when we have arrived at this new place and we go into this void and we're being called to sit with and love and observe and release and clear, a lot of times we tend to think, and that's when the physicality starts to become emotional. And this is what the differentiation that Jenny Schlitz shared in that the article. She says if it's physical but you're still happy, then it's an influx, it's an integration of energy. If it's physical and you're feeling shitty, right? If you're in pain and it's emotional, that's a purge, that's a release. And the release and the purge happens after this new influx of energy takes us to this new place. And then we are sort of by contrast given the ability to see like, oh, okay, I'm in this new place now energetically, and these are all the things that don't fit here. These are all the things that I don't require here. These are all the things that I can't take with me if I'm moving forward. And that's when the purge happens. That's when the void happens. And oftentimes, I just had a session today with a lovely, lovely woman, and we were talking about this, and she was like, I feel like I've been taking 3 steps back. And this is what I've been sharing in my videos the past couple of weeks. Of feeling like, God, it's 2 steps forward, 3 steps back. That's because the void is preceding the next momentum, like forward momentum. And we just have to get really, really clear and really honest about what we can't take with us into this new level of awareness and this new journey, this new phase of the journey. And we oftentimes think that the void means we've done something wrong. Right? We often think like, oh man, I was doing so well and now all of a sudden this happened, or now I'm having these old fears again, and now I'm having this old thought again. The only reason anything repeats, and I've talked about this before, it's a spiral ladder. We're always moving up in awareness, and the only reason anything ever comes back into our awareness is because we have new information. When we have new information, we have an opportunity to shift our perspective. And when we shift our perspective, that's when our reality shifts to match it. This used to happen. These cycles of energy, if you think back, if you've been sort of tracking your progress over the past couple of years, you can think back to last year or the year before, 2013, 2014. It would happen really slowly, right? We would get a big push of energy. We would reach this new level of awareness. We would have like this emotional purge, this physical experience. We would let it all go. And then it would be sort of smooth sailing for like 3 to 6 months. And then we'd have another one. And if over time we have seen that it gets more and more rapid, more and more frequent, more and more consistent, and it's almost like when you watch, and this is a metaphor that the guides have been sharing several times throughout the past couple of years, and I love it because it really, for me, helps me to get a visual. It's like an ice skater, right? It starts to speed up, and so as the ice skater spins fast enough, it starts to take on a whole new shape, and it looks like a whole new physicality, right? It looks like a different shape of a, it's also like when the tires, when you're watching cars on the highway and you see it just looks solid. That's what's starting to happen, is it's speeding up only because we are exiting time. The experience of linear time exists in the density of a 3D experience. And when we're in the lower 3D, really, really in the thick of the density, we have the experience of linear time so that the body, the mind, the spirit, the energy, the physical, the mental, emotional can all sort of take what they need as they need it, because, it's like the physicality has its own sort of timeline, the mental, the emotional, the energetic, they all sort of have their own timeline with how they contend with these energies. And so it was a linear experience so that we could track progress, so that it could be slow enough so that we could be sort of held through it, so that our bodies could adjust and acclimate and do what the bodies needed to do to attune itself to these new energies. But now these energies are coming in and we are raising our density. We are doing our work. We are clearing our density. We are moving up in frequency. We're going up that spiral ladder. And as we move up the spiral ladder out of this third density, the experience of linear time collapses, which means that then the energies begin to, we perceive that it happens faster and faster. We perceive that it happens more frequently. We perceive that it's like, oh God, another one? Like I just finished one last week in terms of a download or an influx of energy. But in actuality, what we are realizing is that we are just moving back to how things really go. Outside of the construct of linear time, outside of the construct of a 3D school environment, we see that like, oh, this is how it really happens. This is, the density is the exception. The linear time is the exception. So we have the experience of it speeding up and happening more rapidly and more consistently because it is speeding up and it's becoming faster and faster. So it's like death and rebirth, death and rebirth, death and rebirth, death and rebirth, because what we're realizing is it's a cycle that is constant and infinite. We're always expanding and growing in a new way. So it's just about being present with wherever you are and allowing yourself, when you're in the void, when you're in this place where you need to release, where you need to be still, where you need to be empty, don't fight it. Don't fight it. You haven't done anything wrong. Just because you're uncomfortable doesn't mean something's wrong. You can be uncomfortable and happy. You can be, in sort of discomfort and perfectly fine. It's just that we have been conditioned, and this is another old layer of conditioning we're releasing, is this idea that, to be spiritual means you're always joyful and happy. No. Hell no. Please disabuse yourself of that idea right now. Spiritual experience is about letting go. Spiritual experience, especially in the beginning of your awakening, is about loss, massive loss. Loss of self, loss of identity, loss of jobs, of family, of friends, of relationships, of whatever, because anything that doesn't vibrate with where you're going, where you sort of this expanded version of yourself, it's got to drop away. It's got to drop away. So have compassion for yourself, have kindness for yourself, take care of yourself. And when you look at the post, the So Fucking What post that I posted, the visual wisdom, also understand that there are times when you gotta do a little tough love. And I'm not talking about being aggressive or angry or abusive to yourself. What I am saying is that at some point we've got to just remember that the mind is just a program, a machine sort of running on autopilot, doing what it thinks it needs to do. And we gotta be the one to come in and go, nope, no, no, no. We're not telling that story anymore. That timeline is collapsed. That version of self has been integrated and released. That's not the story we tell. You've got to give me a revised copy. You just say to yourself, that's a great first draft, but we're not telling that story anymore, so you got to revise that shit. So that's what I meant yesterday when I posted about the void and talking about so fucking what. Because when you're in the void, the mind is scrambling to try to, well, maybe it's this. Is this the story we're telling? What about this? What about this? What about this? And it just kind of starts to go crazy, presenting all of these different options. And we've got to be the ones to say, no, boo, that's not it. So fucking what? So what? So what? So what if I fail? So what if I fall? So what if I'm, excluded? So what if, I get hit by a bus? So what if I get sick? So what if this? So what if that? So what if they laugh? So what if they judge me? So fucking what? None of that matters. And we've got to be willing to sit with ourselves, be compassionate with ourselves, but also understand that the temptation to go back to the old story will always be there at some level. Always. That's how the mind works. The mind is an archive, and it can only offer up what it already knows. It can only offer up what it's already experienced. So it's relative, right? I was talking about this yesterday. I met some friends yesterday downtown, this wonderful group of people that I've been connected with online and digitally, but we for the first time met in person. And I was saying, God, sometimes you feel like, man, I think of the things that I was dealing with 5 years ago, and those are like a fucking walk in the park. I'm like, I would love those problems again. But because it's all relative, there's always going to be, the mind is going to always have something to refer back to. The mind is always going to have something that it can try to backslide towards. And that's what happens in the void, because you're in the new place. You have arrived. You are in the new frequency. You are in the new reality. And now you're starting to ground into it. And the minute that you begin to connect with it and integrate it, that's when all the stuff that is incompatible starts to come to the surface. And the mind says, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God, and you just let it go, you let it go. And the mind says, no, but I need that, I need that, I need that. You don't. You've got to be willing to let it go. So have compassion for yourself and have love for yourself, but realize that the mind is only ever going to try to reach for what it already knows. The mind is not the visionary. The mind is not the genius. The mind is the computer. It is the archive. It is the processor. So when that download comes in and all that new information comes in and the heart comes alive with all this new information, it says, yes, this is the inspiring thing. This is the new direction. This is the new idea. This is the new information. This is the new, impetus, the new motion forward. And we start to find ourselves propelled towards it, and everything, it's sort of like the rush, and we're there and we land and we start to get our bearings, and that's when it starts to integrate now into the human self. So that's what this whole ascension thing is about. It is the merging of the physical and the non-physical, and we emerge as this divine human, the galactic human, human 2.0, whatever you wanted to call it. So I just wanted to share with you my insight and my experience. And, many of you who are watching this may have your own experience and you have your own words and your own terminology, and that's fine. It's not about the language. It's about how do you feel and what do you recognize from the feeling place where you are. So when you're in this void state, when you're being called to empty and release and be the observer, the compassionate observer, don't forget to also stand tall and stand firm and say, no, we don't tell that story anymore. So fucking what? Because those fears are probably never going to come true, and if they do, they will never come true in the way that you say they will. And if they do come true, they will never come true in a way that I will not be equipped to contend with them. So that's it. Just wanted to hop on and say that, share that with you. If you haven't signed up for the soul expansion calls, sign up. This Sunday is when the May ones start, and it's going to be such next level stuff. It's about working with the energy body, the light body, how to actually effectively recreate and reform our experience, working from the inside out, because it's always an inside job. The genesis of everything is internal. But it's all of this stuff that's coming through from the Arcturians, like this geometry and this shape and this color to our energy, and how we can work with that. And the Arcturian light body meditation, which is also on my page on my YouTube channel as well, that'll give you a taste of kind of what we're going to be dealing with. So you can find that on my website, delightedones.com, under the event tab. Click the link that says buy tickets here or register here. And when you buy all 4 calls, then you get access to the calls and all the MP3s, even if you can't make it. So that's it. You guys have a fantastic weekend. I love you. I'm going to take a nap. I've got some stuff to do in a little bit, but I think I'm going to take a little snooze before I do. So thanks for watching, you guys. Love you. Talk to you later. Bye.